Hey guys, tonight we're polishing glass until our fingers cramp, watching dawn color the ocean like a drunk watercolorist. You're standing in a stone cylinder taller than 6 giraffes, stacked vertically, which sounds fun until the coffee runs out. Ancient Fresnel lenses like this one were first installed in lighthouses back in 1823, revolutionizing maritime safety by bending light into a focused beam. Now imagine maintaining one without YouTube tutorials. Your hands move in practiced circles, leather strop hissing against the glass like a disapproving librarian. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers invented ASMR through tasks like this, or just desperately craved sensory stimulation. A rogue seagull eyes your breakfast biscuit, its stare more intense than a tax auditor's. The lens groans as you rotate it, each prism designed to catch and throw light 30 nautical miles. Whale oil once fueled these beacons, which explains why 19th century logbooks smell like a seafood restaurant's dumpster. Your reflection warps in the glass, a funhouse mirror version of someone who hasn't slept properly since 2019. One wrong move could crack the lens, turning your job into a very expensive trivia answer. Downstairs, the tide clock ticks, its brass gears older than your great-grandmother's china set. Salt crusts the lantern room windows. You scrape it off with a thumbnail, adding to the pile of tiny sodium monuments. Modern keepers swear by vinegar solutions, but traditionalists insist a spit polish connects you to the tower's ghosts. Your elbow bumps the auxiliary lamp, kerosene sloshes inside, a reminder that fire safety here involves crossed fingers and luck. The horizon blushes, amber streaks bleeding into cerulean, the sun rising like a lazy theater curtain. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your current coordinates in the comments. Mine involve seagull negotiations and a suspiciously warm can of soda. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Dawn licks the Australian coastline, the world reduced to glass and grindstone beneath your palms. Every lens rotation follows a ritual. 15 clockwise wipes, 3 figure-8 passes, a held breath to check for haze. The Fresnel's grooves hold stories. Storm warnings scratched into brass fittings, initials of keepers who vanished during the Great Depression. You used to hate this chore, resenting the monotony, until realizing these prisms outlive everyone who touches them. Coffee steams in a chipped mug, its scent mingling with machine oil and the ozone tang of distant squalls. Your wristwatch ticks in sync with the rotating mechanism, a pulsing rhythm that syncopates with the waves below. Someone once claimed lighthouse walls absorb memories, that nighttime footsteps echo with previous keepers' anxieties. You're not superstitious, but you do avoid the west staircase after dark. The logbook lies open, a line of blank fields waiting for your entries. Humidity has swollen its pages. They feel like dried kelp between your fingers. You record wind speed, barometric pressure, the number of cargo ships spotted through salt-speckled binoculars. 19th century keepers measured time in lantern cleanings, each completed rotation marked by a notch in their bedposts. Gulls bicker on the gallery, railing their arguments, punctuated by the clang of the tide bell. You flick a crumb through the window, instantly regretting it, as 3 more birds materialize like feathered piranhas. A breeze sneaks through the cracks. It carries the briny scent of seaweed and diesel from a distant trawler. Your mind wanders to mainland luxuries. Grocery stores that aren't boat dependent. Conversations not mediated by crackling VHF radios. The lens hits a sweet spot. Sunlight fractures into a beam so sharp it could cut glass. You lean back, satisfaction warming your ribs like that first sip of whiskey. Maintenance manuals never mention this part, the fleeting pride of keeping darkness at bay, one polished prism at a time. Wiping sweat from your neck, you spot a freighter on the horizon, its silhouette crawling northward like a mechanical beetle. The captain's probably drinking real coffee, fresh milk, steaming in a ceramic mug. You glare at your instant crystals, swearing they've started forming existential dread instead of dissolving. By mid-morning, the lens gleams like a diamond in a jeweler's loop. Your hands smell of metal and lemon oil, an aroma that'll linger until the next storm scrubs it away. Below, waves slam the cliffs, their white foam reminiscent of a million shattered champagne flutes. You fill the coastal humidity report, scribbling numbers, while seagulls tap dance on the copper roof. Someone once tried turning a decommissioned lighthouse into a yoga studio. The online reviews mentioned challenging acoustics and unexpected gull participation. You smirk, wiping the last smudge off the central prism. The horizon blushes. A new day begins in amber streaks. The leather-bound ledger sticks to your palms, salt crystals blooming between its pages. You pry it open where the spine cracks, 19th century rag paper whispering under your thumbs. Faded copperplate script marches across entries. June 12, 1898. Gale force winds. Brigantines sighted, hull breach at 22. No survivors recovered. Each digit bleeds into the margin's ink, surrendered to decades of humid breaths. Your pencil hovers over today's grid. 73 ships passed since Sunday, ferries blinking like fireflies along the trade routes. Historians still argue whether keepers inflated logs to justify their posts to make isolation feel like vigilance. You sketch a tiny kraken in the margin, its tentacles cradling the number 74. Damp warps the oldest entries into Rorschach blots. One page bears wine-colored smudges, or is it rust? You lean closer. The 1903 keeper wrote with iron gall ink, a mix of oak galls and ferrous sulfate that ate through cheaper paper. His entry about a 3-masted schooner survives only in fragments. Rigging shredded, captain's dog howled psalms. A coffee ring stains the 1970s section, the august bitterness of your predecessor's last brew. His handwriting slopes like waves crashing shoreward. May 16, 1978. False alarm at 03. Zero fog reflected the beacon onto low clouds. Vessel circled for hours, thinking it a port. You snort, adding your own addendum. Coffee reserves critical. Send more beans or expect mutiny. Nightfall thickens. The logbook's tissue-thin pages glow under your desk lamp, translucent as ghost skin. Between maintenance logs, someone pressed sea lavender. Its petals left chlorophyll tattoos, green whispers of summers, when keepers still bothered with bouquets. You tuck a strand of kelp beside today's entry, its bladderwrack bubbles popping a faint iodine musk. Rain spatters the window, each droplet magnifying the numerals in your weather report. Wind speed 40 knots. Swell height 15 feet. Barometer dropping like a stone. You chronicle it all, the lighthouse's mechanical pulse, syncopated with your scribbling. Some claim Victorian keepers used whale oil in their ink, giving logs that fishy permanence. Yours smudges if you breathe too hard. Midnight yawns. The 1927 pages curl inward, hiding a lovesick keeper's poems between tide tables. Her eyes held more phosphorescence than the July sea. Your laugh echoes off the watchroom walls. Loneliness makes romantics of us all, even when your only companions are gulls and diesel fumes. A pressed newspaper clipping flutters out yellowed gossip from 1954. Local papers claimed a keeper smuggled whiskey in kerosene drums. You squint at the photo, a man squinting back, his face all eyebrows and defiance. The log that week reads, storm surge disrupted supply lines. Inventories may contain discrepancies. Dawn creeps in, pale fingers smearing the horizon. You snap the ledger shut, its secret safe for another day. Numbers float behind your eyelids. 17 cargo ships, 3 fishing trawlers, 1 Coast Guard cutter. The sea loves counting what it hasn't yet swallowed. The tower shudders your morning tea, ripples concentric warnings in its chipped mug. 93 steps wind below, each metal tread flexing underfoot like a living thing. You press your palm to the curved wall. Granite exhales cold through your calluses, the entire structure humming like a tuning fork struck by the southern gale. Storm surges from 74 carved that scar near the base, a jagged trough where waves peeled away centuries of lime mortar. Historians love debating whether Napoleonic era engineers built lighthouses to last, or just until the next war diverted their iron. Your fingernail catches on a fresh crack, silt deposits glittering where saltwater pried stone from stone. Wind screams through the east-facing loopholes, a 12-note chord played on rusted rebar. The noise would have driven medieval monks to heresy. You jam rags into the worst vents, striped cotton wagging like surrender flags. 19th century keepers used woolen toupees for the same purpose, if the mildew-stained supply logs tell truth. Upstairs, the gallery rail vibrates at 60 hertz, a frequency that makes your molars ache. You've memorized every groan and creak, the tower's lexicon of distress. That low moan near the lantern room, wind squeezing through a sandstone fissure, no wider than a wishbone. The staccato clicks above the service ladder. Rusted guy wires plucking themselves like bass strings. Salt crusts the western windows, crystalline filigree that fractures sunlight into prismatic knives. Each storm adds new layers, ocean breath fossilizing on glass. You scrape it off with a putty knife, the edge singing against silica. Workers restoring Eddystone Lighthouse found 7 inches of salt accumulations in 1982, enough to season a lifetime of soup. Mortar dust peppers your sleeves as you press epoxy into the latest crack. The sealant smells like burned almonds, toxic enough to make your eyes water. Victorian masons mixed their mortar with goat blood, or so claims that musty paperback in the bunkroom. You doubt it. Their mix couldn't outlast your synthetic glues, already failing where the north wall weeps brine. At high tide, waves batter the tidal gauge, its brass fittings green with corrosion. The needle dances between 8 and 12 feet, a drunken waltz dictated by the squall. You record the numbers anyway. Someone's gotta chronicle the sea's mood swings, even if the data reads like free verse. Dusk brings the wind's second shift, colder now, laced with Antarctic bite. You brace against the gallery door, shoulder grinding in its socket as you fight the hinges. 300 years ago, keepers tethered themselves to iron rings during inspections. Their harnesses were hemp, same as the ropes that hung pirates at execution dock. You rely on duct tape and determination. Nightfall transforms the tower into a giant ocarina. Each gust plays a different note. D minor groans from the basement. F sharp whistles through the vents. Meteorologists still can't agree if buildings resonate with storm frequencies, or if isolation warps human hearing. You hum along anyway, matching pitch, until your vocal cords fray. By midnight, the barometer's needle quivers at 97 kilopascals, a pressure drop sharp enough to pop eardrums. Your equilibrium flees, left foot convinced the floor tilts 30 degrees starboard. Crashing waves spit froth through arrow slits, salt spray stinging the half-healed cut on your wrist. When the tempest pauses at 02:17, that lull between tidal tantrums, you press your forehead to an interior wall. The stones radiate centuries of absorbed rage, a geological anger simmering beneath fresh paint. Your breath fogs the plaster. Some claim old lighthouses remember every ship they've failed their walls, thick with unspoken apologies. First light reveals new wounds. A shutter lies twisted on the rocks below, sheet metal shredded like party streamers. You count 9 chisel marks left in the staircase's handrail, each notch a keeper's tally of storms survived. The newest groove is yours, cut after that March typhoon ate the boathouse. Coffee steams in your grip, its warmth leaching into wind-numbed fingers. The tower groans again, a basso profundo complaint that travels up through your boots. You toast the horizon with your mug. Once more unto the breach, you mutter, the words dissolving into spray as the next gale arrives. Rain hammers the copper roof, a timpani roll that shakes dust from the iron rafters. You cinch the lantern room's shutters, their brass hinges screeching like gulls. The beam slices through downpour, revolving its coded apology to ships you'll never see. Wick trimming becomes a dance, each snip measured between thunderclaps. 19th century keepers endured 60-hour storm shifts, their eyelids propped open with matchsticks if the logs aren't tall tailies. Your knife nicks the thumb, blood beads ruby bright on kerosene-stained wool. No time, the lamp's heartbeat outranks yours. Glass panels shudder in their bronze frames, each prism trembling. Historians still argue whether Victorian engineers designed these lenses to calm storms or mock them. You tighten the warped retaining bolts, palms raw from cross-threaded screws. A 1923 typhoon cracked the original Fresnel glass. Its replacement, shipped from Glasgow in a coffin-sized crate lined with horsehair, wind sneaks through a cracked glazing bar, a banshee wail that raises neck hairs. You plug the gap with waxed linen, same material Queen Victoria's corset makers used for stitch reinforcement. The tempest retaliates, sluicing rain finds every pinhole in the roof. Your socks squelch, barometric pressure drops so fast the lantern flames gutter, their blue cores dimming to ghosts. You shield the wicks with your body, overcoat smoking. 19th century keepers swore storms could extinguish a lamp from 10 miles away, like some jealous sea god blowing out a candle. The auxiliary generator coughs, its diesel throat clogged with salt crust. You drain the fuel filter, petrol swirling with rainbow toxins. Emergency protocols demand gloves, but touch matters here. Grease under fingernails maps your survival. Lightning stutters. The world becomes a daguerreotype in negative. Frozen mid-blink, you count. 1,000 to 1,000. The explosion comes at 11. Transformer, ship's boiler. The beam sweeps the cove, revealing nothing but whitecaps. Hail arrives, marble-sized stones that ricochet off the weather vane. You catch one in your palm, translucent as Antarctic ice. A 1946 meteorological journal claims such ice pellets contain plankton DNA, seeds of life, hurled skyward by polar cyclones. The hailstone melts, leaving a grit of ancient ocean, and cranking the lens gear becomes prayer. 7 rotations per minute, a monk's chant against chaos. Your shoulder socket grinds, reminding you of the 78 keeper who dislocated his arm during a winter squall. He reset it against the fog bell, drowned the scream in rum. Rain morphs to horizontal needles, peppering the seaward windows. You tape the panes with nautical charts, Mercator projections, clinging like wet skin. Navigators once bribed keepers to distort lighthouse ranges, stretching safe passage zones toward rogue shipping lanes. The parchment yellows, glue surrendering to damp. Midnight brings the tides crescendo. Waves vault the breakwater, tsunami, ghosts hungry for the tower's ankles. The foundation holds barely. Engineers added this concrete skirt in 1954 after Hurricane Hazel peeled back the original brick like an orange rind. By 3 a.m., the storm tires its tantrum, dissolving into spitting drizzle. You collapse against the generator, cheek pressed to warm steel. Some claim machinery learns its keeper's heartbeat, that engines hum in sympathetic vibration. The dynamo thrums a weary C-sharp. Your pulse sinks imperfectly. Dawn leaks through storm-smudged glass, a tarnished coin gleaming on the horizon. You peel sodden charts from windows, their inked coastlines blurred into abstraction. The logbook lies open, waiting. Your pen hovers. Historians will parse this entry for storm data, never the tremor in your letters. Coffee reheats for the third time. It tastes of tin and perseverance. You salute the retreating clouds with chipped porcelain. The lamp spins on each rotation, erasing night's fingerprints from the glass. Moonlight paints the waves, silver their crests, etching braille messages on the dark. You lean against the gallery rail, binoculars cold against your cheekbones. Below, the cove coughs up timber bones. A dozen shipwrecks hidden beneath moon-rippled skin. The SS Admella sank here in 1859. 90 hours of horror before rescuers reached its splintering hull. Survivors drank their own urine mixed with seawater. Victorian newspapers called it the agony of August. Your boot taps the emergency bell, its clang lost in the surf's white noise. Local fishermen swear the reef sings on still nights, metal hulls grinding an oceanic dirge. You've heard it too, low vibrations in the teeth that taste like rust. Last summer, a diver surfaced claiming he'd seen dinner plates stacked neat in the Admella's galley. 1930s China, not 1800s. His YouTube video got 6 views before delisting. Historians still argue whether the Loch Ard ran aground due to drunken navigation or suicidal currents. You've read the theories, eyewitness accounts of the captain's whiskey breath, tidal charts contradicting themselves. The truth rots with the keel 4 fathoms deep. Tide pools glitter with shipwreck shrapnel twisted nails. A hinge, something that might have been a doll's arm. You pocket a porcelain shard, willow pattern blue smudged by decades of salt. Someone's teacup, someone's bad luck. A green flare erupts offshore, momentary daylight staining the waves. Your spine stiffens. No distress call on the radio, just dead air and static. The Coast Guard log shows no scheduled drills. By the time you focus the binoculars, darkness swallows the emerald stain. Flashlight beam dances over tidal rocks, lichen clinging like mold on expired bread. There, a shape too angular for nature. You scramble down the goat path, boots skidding on kelp-slick stone. The object winks in your light, a brass ship's chronometer fused to the reef. Its face reads 3:17 a.m., hands frozen mid-tick. 92 pounds of precision engineering reduced to a barnacle condo. You chip at the edges. Marine growth resists like concrete. The Loch Ard's manifest listed 7 chronometers. This makes 8. Rain begins, needle-thin drops that slide down your collar. Historians love forgotten numbers. They'll dissect this like vultures on roadkill. You leave the relic to the tide, its truth buried under moonlit waves. Back in the lantern room, you sketch the chronometer in the log's margin. The beam sweeps the cove, illuminating nothing but your own reflection in the glass. Ghost ships don't sink twice. Probably. Dawn arrives gray and unconvinced. You sip yesterday's coffee, its bitterness sharpened by sleeplessness. Somewhere below, the chronometer counts seconds for no one, a mechanical heart outlasting its body. The sea gurgles laughter through 1,000 shattered hulls. Fog thickens across the water, a woolen blanket muffling the world. You're halfway through rewiring the backup generator when the vibrations start, not in your tools, but in your molars. The hum travels up your jawbone, a subauditory growl that makes your coffee cup shiver on the workbench. Out on the gallery, the mist parts like theater curtains. A dorsal fin slices the surface, then another. Humpbacks, 9 no, 11 moving information older than lighthouses. Migrating from Antarctic feeding grounds to Queensland's warmer waves, just as their ancestors did past the SS Admella's doomed hull. Their blowholes exhale vapor ghosts, each breath a wet thunderclap. One calf rolls sideways, its eye the size of a teacup saucer. You wonder if it's staring at the beacon's sweep or your dumbstruck face. Sorry, you mutter, your voice thin against their basso rumbles. No encores. The pod's song pulses through the tower's iron skeleton, a medley of moans and creaks that bypasses ears entirely. Coastal legends whisper of whale weathervanes, old salts claiming the giants twisted shipwrecks into nautical compasses. Last year, an article in Marine Mysteries monthly suggested they navigate via electromagnetic fields from underwater rock formations. You snort, but track the pod's path anyway, straight through the Loch Ard's grave. Coincidence? Barnacle brain fuel. Historians still argue whether 19th century whalers mimicked lighthouse horns to lure their prey or if the sounds repelled them. You imagine Victorian harpooners blaring foghorns, a comedy sketch drowned in gore. The lead whale dives, its fluke slapping water with a crack that echoes like a pistol shot. 2 miles east, the backup beacon winks on automatic. Your gut tightens. That's the 3rd malfunction this week, flickers timed to the pod's passing. Maybe whales and lighthouses speak the same rusty dialect. Maybe you've inhaled too much kerosene fumes. You fumble for the hydrophone, its cord tangled like mating eels. When the headphones click into place, the world dissolves into wail. Their calls layer over each other warbles, beneath groans, beneath something resembling a didgeridoo, played through a tuba. The calf's voice cracks mid-note, a puberty serenade drowned by its elders. Dusk stains the horizon marmalade orange. The pod forms a ragged circle, their blowholes aimed skyward. A breaching ritual, group sneeze. One matriarch floats belly up, her pectoral fins limp as surrender flags. Your breath hitches. Death pose. But as the last light catches her flank, she rolls, revealing a newborn calf nursing beneath her. The hydrophone picks up new frequencies, clicks like Morse code against the background drone. You jot them down instinctively. Dot dot dash, dot dash dot. Translates to R and K in code, a fluke or the world's most patient marine crossword. Back in the radio room, you switch off the hissing dials. Whale song lingers in your cochlea like tinnitus, a phantom baseline to the rotating lenses whir. Dinner's can of beans sits unopened. The label boasts now 20% more bean. You award it Best Supporting Meal. Nightfall brings bioluminescence. The wake of the departing pod glows electric blue. Their song fades to a porous hum, half memory, half vibration. You reset the backup beacon, its fresh bulb, projecting stabler light. Coincidence, again, that the flickers cease as the whales vanish northward. Under weather notes, you scribble marine megafauna migration, no impact on operations. The lie curdles your throat. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the calf learns star navigation. You click off the desk lamp, letting the moon's silver outline the chronometer sketch from yesterday's log. The two artifacts, whale song and shipwreck timepiece, vibrate in silent argument across pages. And by midnight, the generator's purr sinks to your heartbeat. Sleep comes salty and thick, a dive into water where whale calls warp into dinner bells, foghorns, the creak of the Admella's dying hull. You surface gasping at 3 a.m., the lighthouse beam your only tether to now. Dawn will arrive unanswered, no breaching shapes, no bone-rattling serenades, just the sea's amnesia, erasing yesterday's tracks. You press play on the hydrophone recording, forgetting the device still cradles the previous keeper's cursed yacht rock mixtape. The whales deserved better. The lantern room stinks of burnt wicks and elbow grease. Your nose hairs curl in protest. Corroded gears lie scattered, their teeth gnawed by sea air's relentless bite. You pry at a rust-fused casing with a screwdriver older than Medicare. The tool's handle notched by keepers who died before moon landings. 19th century maintenance manuals recommended whale oil for stuck mechanisms. You opt for WD-40, spraying it like holy water on the oxidized altar. When the casing finally surrenders, 3 flakes drift out, snowfall from a rust blizzard. The central spindle looks like a chewed pencil, its brass pitted, but still true. Historians still argue whether Victorian engineers designed these lenses to outlast empires or just spite. Your pliers slip, knuckles meet sharpened metal. A blood droplet joins the oil stains. Jackson Pollock's worst reviewed work. Outside, the lamp keeps spinning. Its syncopated click syncs with your pulse. Two rhythms entwined. The repair's manual suggests replacing parts every 5 years. This gear hasn't seen a wrench since Nixon resigned. You blow dust off the schematic. Some apprentices, 1937, cursive, gone sepia. A coffee ring obscures the torque specifications, eternal echo of a long-dead keeper's breakfast. Rumor says Cape naturalists keepers brewed tea with distilled fog water, which explains their unparalleled grimness. You settle for microwaving yesterday's coffee. The mug's heat warms your palm through grease-blackened gloves. 10 paces north, the cliff crumbles hourly, your tower stands defiant. For now, bolt by bolt, the gearbox reassembles, a puzzle where missing pieces get replaced with spit and hope. The lubricant tin claims it's tallow-based. You choose not to ask which animal donated its fat. When the last screw bites, you crank the lever, metal screams, then hums. The gears engage, spinning smooth as a vinyl B-side. Rain spits against the lantern glass, 1,000 liquid needles. Your reflection wobbles in the lens, a smudged ghost holding a crescent wrench. Coastal lore swore lighthouses mirrored each other across oceans, flashing coded gossip through the night. You adjust the focal ring, wondering what lies your beam tells Portugal's Cabo de Roca. The logbook demands an update. You scribble performed routine maintenance, no anomalies detected. The pen hesitates. Add a postscript, found 1943 penny, in gear teeth, tails up for bad luck. Let tomorrow's keeper solve that riddle. Dusk arrives unannounced. The repaired lamp projects cleaner light. Its beam carves the fog, a blade shearing through gauze. You count the rotations, 32 per minute. Same rhythm since they switched from clockwork to electricity. Same rhythm when the Fort Dundas wrecked itself on the reef. Hunger gnaws, but the pantry offers only saltines and regret. You crush a weevil between thumbnails, protein garnish. The radio crackles with a trawler's weather request. Responding feels like betrayal to the tower's analog soul. Midnight oil burns, literally. A kerosene drip stains your boot, rainbow puddle mimicking a gas spill art exhibit. The spare bulb cabinet creaks, its hinges singing alto to the lighthouse's baritone. Inside, antique filaments glow faintly, ghost lights awaiting their encore. By first light, your fingertips map every gear's contour, blind reading braille through calluses. The lamp's heartbeat thrums through floorboards, somewhere beneath your boots, beneath layers of rust and marine paint. The original 1857 foundation, stone, mutters secrets to the bedrock. You sink into the watch chair, its cane seat groaning. The tower exhales through cracked window seams. Sleep comes in 90-second increments, each blink scored by the lamp's metronomic sweep. In the gaps between rotations, you swear the gears whisper. Again, again, again. The foghorn's groan tears through your half-sleep, a sound like God clearing his throat. You lurch upright, the watch chair's cane imprint tattooed on your cheek. Beneath the tower, waves slap irregularly. Something man-made breaches the gray curtain. 19th century keepers relied on monthly cutter ships, their holds stuffed with salt pork and paraffin. Modern supply drops come quarterly, assuming the contractor remembers you exist. The boat materializes, a hulking shadow vomiting diesel fumes. 3 canvas sacks hit the dock, their thuds echoing up the cliff face. Legend claims Tasmanian sailors soaked coffee beans in rum, calling it devil's brew for night watches. The note tucked between flour sacks begs to differ fresh coffee. Stay alive. No signature, just a smiley face inked like a noose. You sniff the beans anyway, half expecting caramelized betrayal. Unloading feels sacramental, each can, and crate a votive offering. The final box stinks of cheese or surrender. Historians still argue whether Victorian keepers hoarded pickled eggs or just suffered in silence. You stack tins with care, their labels promising beef stew in fonts from the Reagan era. The boat captain revs the engine, impatient as a seagull at a chip shop. He's already retreating your isolation, clinging to his hull like barnacles. You wave anyway, one finger tracing the note's crude smile. Coffee steams in yesterday's mug, its bitterness cut with powdered creamer. Survival never tasted so synthetic. MRE wrappers skitter across the dock, wind's idea of housekeeping. You pocket the note, its paper already softening in the mist. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a procurement clerk shrugs, your existence reduced to a checkbox. Supply delivery complete. The lighthouse hums, agreeing. The coffee's aftertaste still clings, a burnt caramel ghost haunting your tongue. Above, wings clatter against the lantern room's iron cage, feathers and fury in equal measure. You sigh. This week's gull squadron has mastered kamikaze formation. Victorian keepers nailed wooden owl decoys to gallery rails, those glass eyes now pitted by salt. Modern ornithologists call it futile. Birds recognize static predators within hours. You've upgraded to aluminum pie pans, their clattering supposed to deter. The gulls treat them as wind chimes, a soundtrack for their aerial tantrums. One bold juvenile perches on the foghorn, its screech echoing the machine's own rumble. Historians still argue whether 19th century keepers ate gull eggs or just cursed their abundance. You toss a stale biscuit over the railing. Feeding them feels less like charity than bribery. A mottled female claims your weathervane, her nest of twigs and fish guts defying gravity. Last month, she stole your sock. You spot it now, molded into her rookery like grubby insulation. 19th century logs mention keepers training falcons, an attempt at gull control. The project died when a bird named Reginald mauled a postal inspector. Midday sun turns the gallery into a griddle droppings, sizzling where they land. You hose down the worst patches, The smell evolves from fish market to chemical warfare. In 1923, a Scottish keeper painted the dome. With chili paste, gulls avoided it, until rain revived the assault. Dusk brings the worst offense. Courtship duets screeched through ventilator slits. Your bunk vibrates, their passion sounding like rusted hinges in a hurricane. Radio static offers no refuge. Each burst of interference syncs with their squawks. You consider playing bagpipe music through the PA system. The birds would probably harmonize. Floorboards creak under nesting debris, crushed shells, and desiccated starfish. Some keepers believed gulls carried drowned sailors' souls, their cries echoing lost names. You sweep the refuse into tide charts, tomorrow's high mark measured in gull vomit. At midnight, a chick tumbles into the service stairwell, all fluff and indignant peeps. Its parents dive bomb your scalp as you carry it outside. Victorian naturalists swore gulls remember human faces, a fact you test by flipping them off. They reply with precision bombardments of clams. The biologist's pamphlet said leave nests undisturbed. It's illegal to relocate them. You count eggs while the mother glares, 4 spotted ovals warmer than your morning toast. The 1982 Lighthouse Preservation Act never mentioned avian squatters. You mount a beach umbrella as shade, their gratitude surfaces as reduced screech volume. By dawn, the colony's rhythms mirror your own preening as you brush teeth, squabbling as you curse the percolator. Isolation reshapes definitions today. Company means not getting pooped on during breakfast. You fork cold stew from the can. Gulls eye your meal like it's their inheritance. Waves crash, the birds quiet for 3 exact seconds. You hold your breath, clinging to the fragile truce. Then a pellet of half-digested mackerel plops into your coffee. The lighthouse creaks, its laugh lines showing in the cracked plaster. The tide retreats its frothy lacework, unraveling across volcanic rock. You kneel where water meets land, palms braced against stone that's warmer than the ocean's breath. Anemones furl their gelatinous crowns, retreating from your shadow. A hermit crab clatters past, its borrowed shell clicking like ill-fitting dentures. There's solace in these briny puddles. No gulls here, just the slow blink of starfish. You whisper to a sunflower sea star, admiring its 16 arms knotted like a sailor's rope work. Experts think Victorian naturalists shipped 3,000 specimens to London aquariums, most suffocated in transit, preserved as taxidermy oddities. This one flexes its tube feet, each suction cup a pink pucker hungry for muscles. Your knees soak through, denim becoming a second skin. Barnacles rasp as tides swirl higher, their feathery legs combing the water like toothbrushes. 19th century whalers used starfish as navigational aids, bizarre, but documented in at least 7 captains' logs. You press a palm to the rock, its ridges mapped with more care than your weather charts. A pistol shrimp snaps its claw, the pop echoes like a champagne cork. Tiny fishes dart through your reflection, the version of you that ripples here lacks crow's feet. For 5 minutes, you admit you miss traffic noise. The shrimp responds with another pop nature subtweet. Low tide exposes sand dollars, their dead faces etched with petaled patterns. Living ones bristle with purple spines. You cradle one until it squirms. Some believe their skeletal remains are mermaid coins, a myth you've half adopted for lack of small talk. Salt crusts your fingertips, the same crystals Victorian ladies sprinkled on oatmeal to cure hysteria. A wave crashes, anemones seize their chance to feed. Tentacles writhe, translucent harpoons hunting plankton. You regret not naming them earlier. They've earned titles now. The grumpy one clutching a pebble. That's Gerald. Your radio crackles with static. 3 words pierce through. Coastal erosion accelerating. You switch it off. Here, time isn't measured in years. It's the slow creep of tube worms cementing their calcite tubes. A crab sidesteps into the shadow of your boot, its pincers weighed down by algal bling. Rain begins, each drop pocking the tide pools into a million fleeting craters. You spot something wedged in a crevice, salt-swollen pages from a logbook. The ink has bled into Rorschach blooms, stains forming shapes like fractured lighthouses. Pro tips from 1912. Soaking rusted bolts in urine works better than vinegar. You tuck the paper under a stone. Let the sea finish editing. A bead of rain slips down your neck. Cold meets the warmth trapped under your collar. Historians still argue whether the Aera people held moonlit ceremonies in these rock pools, their canoes long dust, their songs devoured by surf. You hum a melody, something shapeless, that dissolves into the hiss of retreating waves. The starfish don't judge. Sunset ignites the shallows, water transmuting from pewter to molten brass. You peel a strand of kelp from the rocks, its holdfast resisting like a child's grip. 500 species call that rubbery forest home. You're just the uninvited tourist. As light fades, bioluminescent plankton spark, a galaxy spun from seawater. Your thighs burn from squatting, the kind of pain that feels earned. You rise, joints popping a protest anthem. Gerald, the anemone, retracts, betrayed by your departure. Waves swallow your bootprints, each step erased before you take the next. Back in the tower, sand grinds between your toes. The gulls roost silent for once, their bellies full of fish and spite. You flick a barnacle shard into the sink. It clinks like a toast to no one. Salt water dries on your skin, leaving constellations that itch. Sleep comes uneasily, not that it matters. The tide will return at dawn, scrubbing the rocks clean of every confession. Kerosene residue clings to your wrists, the machine's metallic sweat. Your thumb brushes the brass pressure gauge, its needle trembling at the edge of red. 19th century keepers used whale oil, a detail that makes your vegetable-based fuel feel downright vegan. You chart the pulse of gears, each rotation calibrated to outpace the planet's own spin. copper pipes serpentine. Through the towers guts their patina, echoing the statue of Liberty's green frown. A vibration hiccups through the housing, the kind you'd miss without calloused palms pressed to metal. Rumors persist that Nikola Tesla once designed a beacon powered by atmospheric electricity, blueprints lost when his pigeon-filled hotel room burned. You tighten a valve, hoping today's not the day you become an experimental footnote. Rain plinks against the lantern room glass, distorting the prism's kaleidoscope into liquid fractals. The Fresnel lens floats in its mercury bath, a 72-pound jewel cut for maximum refraction. Historians still argue whether the 1852 Lighthouse Board deliberately underpaid engineers to maintain their hunger for precision. You buff a glass panel, your breath fogging the honeycombed surface. A gear tooth flakes off, the sound like a molar cracking on hard candy. Your toolbox coughs up a replacement, rusty but intact. Pre-war steel, someone's initials scratched near the ratchet. EP, every repair feels like archaeology, digging through layers of others' desperation. The compressor wheezes, its bellows pumping air to the mantle. One spark from this beast could torch your eyebrows clean off. You've seen the photos. Whaling ships once harvested right whale baleen to reinforce these very tubes, flexible yet fireproof. Now it's all asbestos-free polymer progress with a chemical aftertaste. Night falls, the beacon throws its arm across the waves. You count seconds between flashes, 37, 38, 39. The mechanism stutters, cold panic sluices through your veins. The light can't fail during the tanker's transit. Fingers pry open the governor casing. All blackened gears whisper secrets. A shredded spring coils in the bottom, its temper long since surrendered. You jury-rig a fix with piano wire from the storage closet, inventoried in 1987, and untouched since. Tension snaps into place. The flywheel regains its hypnotic spin. Moonlight bleeds through the service hatch. Your shadow becomes a many-armed mechanic on the walls. The beam sweeps again, steady as a metronome. Engineers' lore claims the first Fresnel lens accidentally focused sunlight into a fishing boat's sail, incinerating it mid-harbor. You double-check the shutters, paranoia as the best preventive maintenance. Dawn looms wrist-deep in grease when the radio croaks to life. MV Pacific Star confirms safe passage. Beacons looking extra zesty tonight. Your laugh startles a moth off the pressure dial. Its wings leave atomic patterns in the dust. Fuel levels dip. You heave a fresh drum up the spiral stairs. 19th century keepers averaged 5 hernias per career, a stat that haunts your lifting form. The smell hits first, kerosene's astringent punch masking the ocean's brine. One misplaced matchstick, and you're a fireworks display with legs. By mid-morning, the machine hums, a contented cat purring in sunlight. You document the repair in the logbook, filling margins with doodles of imploding gears. A 1938 entry warns against using seagull feathers for cleaning. Saliva degrades brass. Modern problems require duct tape and existential grit. The lens turns its prismatic teeth, biting into daylight. You press your palm to the glass, feel the heartbeat of 10,000 refracted rays. Somewhere below, waves chew the coastline. Up here, the machine breathes, and you breathe with it. The winter solstice grips the tower. Your breath crystallizes before reaching the logbook's open page. Frost feathers across the lens, 1,000 frozen spiderwebs fracturing the beam. Roman sentries once lit beacon fires on this night, believing the sun needed encouragement to return. You adjust your headlamp. Its feeble glow barely rivals the ice's blue shimmer. Your thermos clicks, last dregs of coffee, now slush laced with salt. Cold seeps through woolens. You're a walking snowman, shedding flakes with each step. 19th century keepers swore a layer of rendered mutton fat beneath socks prolonged toe survival. You question their culinary priorities, but keep licking your lips. The spiral staircase groans, each iron tread protesting your ascent. Mercury pools beneath the lens shiver, their liquid silver bubbling like a witch's cauldron. Historians still argue whether ancient Britons built monolithic lighthouses or just got really into arranging rocks. Your boot skids on black ice. Suddenly, you're the world's least graceful figure skater. Midnight's chill unspools. The beam carves mile-long arcs through obsidian skies. Your shadow stretches grotesque across the gallery, a spindly giant trapped in glass. Victorian keepers knitted sweaters for their lighthouse cats, documented in a 1893 Maritime. Ledger you're half convinced was satire. Frostbite nips at your earlobes. You press frozen hands against the fuel drum. Thermodynamics becomes personal. The kerosene's glacial sludge refuses to flow. A 1928 manual suggested vigorous application of profanity. You test the theory with modern flair. The horizon taunts, an unbroken seam between void and void. You count heartbeats between the lights sweep 97, 98, 99. An Inuit myth claims the solstice opens a bridge between seal spirits and the living. You glance seaward, half expecting whiskered faces in the spray. Ice storms the windows, each gust adding another layer to the glacial millefeuille. Your flashlight dies mid-swipe, plunging you into a Claude Monet meets Satan's snow globe. Pre-electric keepers drank mercury tonics for night vision, explaining their average 30-month lifespan. You chip at the condensate pan stray splinters, carving red tributaries across numb fingers. The auxiliary heater's glow fades, its coils darkening like a dying hearth. A 1947 experiment proved lighthouse beams can freeze fog into falling diamonds. You'd trade 10 for a working space heater. Dawn looms, still 7 hours off, its promise written in theoretical photons. You chew salt pork texture akin to mummified erasers while consulting a star chart. The beam catches an ice flow, transforming it into a sliding disco ball across black water. Teeth chatter Morse code, SOS optional. Your pencil snaps mid-log entry, graphite dust mingling with frost crystals, 17th century Dutch keepers staged drunken ice skating races between lighthouses. Casualty rates suggest last place finishers got the best pensions. The world narrows, each labored breath a white flag. You press against the lens, housing its residual warmth leaching through your parka. Frost etches Fibonacci spirals on the glass, mathematics mocking your hypothermic stasis. When the first ochre streak bleeds east, you almost miss the cold's embrace. Thawing ice drips a staccato requiem across the lantern room floor. The beam fades, its job outsourced to the creeping sun. You peel off a glove, watch blood flow, revive purple knuckles. Some argue Neolithic people celebrated solstices with lighthouse-like bonfires on coastal cliffs, alignment grids lost to shifting shorelines. You just want your toes back. By noon, the frost retreats, its crystalline empire reduced to puddles. The lens spins, oblivious to the night siege. You sip resurrected coffee, its bitterness, a grounding tonic. Outside, waves resume their endless munching of the continent's edge. Winter's fist will clench again. For now, the light turns, the sea gnaws, and you stand sentry between. The storm howls like a dial tone tonight. Your fingers hover above the radio dial. Static hisses through the speaker, a white noise blanket stitching itself into your eardrums. Between bursts of interference, a voice fragments into English. Mayday cargo hold 28 degrees. Coordinates dissolve into spectral wines, the transmission collapsing like a sandcastle. At high tide, you scribble numbers, black ink pooling into a Rorschach blot of dread. In 1912, the Titanic's radio operators clocked 72 hours straight, Morse code blurring with hypothermia shakes. You've done 3-hour shifts. Your coffee addiction feels validated. The speaker crackles again, this time with Soviet tiara Chinese letter restia tion pulses. UVB 76 still buzzes nightly since 1982. Some say it's dead hand nuclear codes. You prefer the haunted fridge in Murmansk theory. Rain pelts the tower, a million tiny fists demanding to know what you'll do about that mayday. Your transmitter key feels heavier than a tombstone. Every keeper knows the rules. Never engage, just relay. But rules fray like old rope out here. You flip the switch, your voice tinny against the storm's bass. Repeat coordinates, vessel in distress. The void swallows your words before they leave your teeth. And cold seeps into the radio's guts. Vacuum tubes glowing like drunken fireflies. You dismantle the housing, find a moth fossilized between resistors. Its wings splay in perpetual surrender, antennae still tuned to some moth god's frequency. Historians still argue whether Amelia Earhart's last signals got scrambled by equatorial static or censored by banana republics. You're too busy breathing on frozen capacitors to care. Midnight brings new horrors, the dial lands on music. Smooth jazz oozes through the speaker, saxophone licks, warping into atonal screeches. You picture a lounge band marooned on an ice floe, their last set devolving with frostbite when the EPIRB alarm finally shrieks. You jump so hard your vertebrae realign. The emergency buoy's signal pulses, a digital heartbeat 40 nautical miles northeast. Too far, always too far. You check the log. 18 ships reported lost in this grid since 1947. Insurance adjusters call it coincidence. Old keepers murmur about the devil's radio. You file the coordinates, watch red ink bleed through 3 logbook pages. By dawn, the airwaves settle into hissing complacency. Static becomes your white noise lullaby, each pop, and crackle a counterpoint to the waves below. The first mate of the vanished star of Melbourne swore he heard big band music before his engines died in 54. You sip lukewarm tea, wonder if Glenn Miller's ghost runs the aux cord in Davy Jones' locker. Sunrise glitches through storm clouds, streaks of crimson corrupting the gray. You reset the radio for the 100th time, hands trembling through routine. Some nights, when the northern lights ionize the atmosphere, WWII transmissions bleed through. Churchill's speeches overlapping Tokyo Rose, history's greatest mixtape. Today, only the hiss remains. The Coast Guard's noon check-in crackles through, all vessels accounted for. You stare at your scrawled coordinates, now just ink on pulp. They'll dissolve faster than the clouds shredding above. Your index finger hesitates over the log's resolution column. The pen hovers, bleeding a tiny black island onto the page. Outside, the beacon sweeps, its rhythm untouched by ephemeral things like maydays or men. Salt crusts the glass like barnacle armor. Your vinegar-soaked rag scratches against the haze. Each circular motion reveals another inch of Tasman Sea, its mood today shifting from steel gray to bruised violet. They taught you the old ways. 19th century keepers boiled vinegar with ashes for extra bite. Their journals never mentioned how it makes your eyes water like a bad breakup. A seagull perches outside, its beady eye tracking your progress through the pain. You mimic its head tilt, suddenly understanding why Victorians stuffed these jerks into hats. The rag snags on a stubborn patch, crystallized spray resisting your efforts like epoxy. For half a heartbeat, the smear resembles Tasmania's coastline, or a kidney. Depends on your last medical. Sunlight finally breaches the clouds, slicing through your newly clarified window. The beam catches motes of salt dust. They twirl like miniature disco balls. You half expect a hermit crab to roll up wearing tiny sunglasses. Outside, waves hammer the cliffs with the monotony of a department store escalator. 19th century keepers logged storms in precise Palmer method cursive, their inkwells chained to desks during gales. Your own notes read like ransom letters, all caps and exclamation points when the squalls hit. A 1936 tabloid claimed window grit could predict typhoons, salt hieroglyphs. Only drunk sailors could decipher. You squint at the streaks. Maybe that squiggle means buy milk. The gull pecks the glass, translating for you in Morse code. Back to scrubbing, 3 vertical swipes, then horizontal. The rhythm syncs with the foghorn's baseline. Preservationists still bicker about whether salt corrosion or overzealous cleaners did in the Cape Leeuwin lenses back in 9. You buff harder, your reflection warping in the glass like a funhouse mirror. Something clinks in your bucket. Fishing it out, a shark's tooth older than the lighthouse. Maybe a wedgetail dumped it mid-flight. Maybe a bored whaler pitched it at his mate. Its serrated edge gleams, a fossilized threat, softened by centuries of tides. The lower panes take the brunt, their surfaces pitted like acne-scarred teenagers. You kneel, knees protesting against cast iron grates, and attack the milky film. Victorian engineers insisted on 8-panel windows for harmonic resonance with coastal vibrations. They definitely never scrubbed them hungover. Noon sun turns the glass house into a greenhouse. Sweat snakes down your spine. You peel off your flannel, wonder if 1850s keepers worked shirtless. Probably not. Those corsets didn't lace themselves. Through the eastern window, a container ship glides past like a floating apartment block. You raise your rag in greeting. The crew waves back tiny specks against rust-streaked hulls. 19th century mariners used to flash mirrors at lighthouses, testing the keeper's alertness. If you ignore them now, do you fail some celestial pop quiz? The vinegar stench clings to your hands, a perfume nobody at the mainland bars would appreciate. Oh, to pickled sentinel, notes of brine, loneliness, and distilled regret. You pause at the 7th pane, a hairline crack no thicker than a spider's thread. Thumb tracing its path, you remember the Cape naturaliste disaster of 1912. Keeper Williamson spent weeks polishing a fractured lens, never noticed the flaw, until the whole prism exploded during the autumn equinox. Glass shards embedded in his whale oil charts, preserved under museum acrylic now. Your breath fogs the repaired section, watching how the vapor navigates the fissure. Safety inspectors would have condemned this pain decades ago. But out here, everything's provisional. Dusk arrives early, the western windows reflecting your lamp's first rotations. You flick off the interior bulbs, watch how the beacon's sweep paints your bucket in liquid gold. For 3 seconds, it's a holy grail, then just Home Depot plastic again. Final inspection, you press your forehead to the glass. Somewhere below, a breaching humpback slaps the surface. The impact shivers through the tower, up your spine, into your skull. For one crystalline moment, you're the lighthouse. Moonlight liquefies the sea, a mercury expanse stretching to Antarctica's doorstep. Your shadow climbs the lens room wall, a hunched giant polishing its monocle. Waves build false prows in the dark, angled shadows that could be clipper ships, or just the ocean's cruel origami. The 1926 SS Marlowe vanished here. Newspapers swore the keeper saw its ghostly rigging through a storm's eye. You glance at the radar screen, its green heartbeat pulsing. Empty. Always empty. 3 a.m. Brews desperation, sharper than your instant coffee. Every crash of surf becomes splitting timber. Every gull cry, a sailor's final gasp. You press binoculars to stinging eyes, scanning for what's not there. 19th century logs describe phantom fleets before winter solstices, mirage armadas that dissolved at dawn. Preservationists still argue whether keepers hallucinated from isolation or glimpsed Bermuda Triangle spillover. Something winks offshore, a glint of metal. You fumble for the searchlight. The beam reveals only a buoy's rotting collar, its bell clanking like loose teeth. Lighthouses once employed, fog cats, trained tabbies said to sense storms before barometers dropped. Your seagull squatter would just steal emergency rations. The horizon shivers. A cargo ship materializes for 3 heartbeats. You grab the radio mic, knuckles bleaching white. Static. The shape becomes wave crests, arranging themselves into a cruel joke. Breath returns cold and shaky, your ribs a cage for panicked wings. Prism lights rotate overhead, golden bands sweeping the blackness like a watchman's lantern. You count the pulse, 7 seconds on, 3 off. It's rhythm, not Morse code, though you've debated sending what's your damage. To the void, wind piles water into pyramids, Egyptian-worthy wedges that collapse under their own ambition. A tattered shipping forecast loops through your mind. Cyclonic, veering northerly, 5 to storm 10. The microphone feels biotic, a cold tongue against your palm. You remember the 1942 tragedy at Gabo Island. Keepers reported a burning tanker for hours. Lifeboats arrived at dawn to saltwater and shame. The incident vanished from official records. Too embarrassing for wartime morale. False alarms claw at your sanity. Each could be catastrophe, demanding hyperfocus. You chew a wasabi pea left from care packages, nasal burn shocking you present. The local pub's jukebox plays Meat Loaf at this hour. You envy its certainty. Peering through the thermal camera, a walrus-shaped blotch appears northeast. Tasmania hasn't had walruses since Pleistocene tourists left bad Yelp reviews. You toggle filters. Blob becomes a humpback's heat signature, or maybe Sauron's summer home. Lantern oil needs checking rituals anchor you to reality. The reserve tank's gauge reads full, its glass face fogged like cataracted eyes. Keepers once smuggled brandy in these chambers. 19th century OSHA, be damned. Dawn crouches below the horizon, its approach marked by hesitant lavender streaks. You scribble the night's non-events in the logbook. Potential phenomena. 4 confirmed vessels. 0 sanity points. Marginal. The radar blips. A container ship finally materializes 20 nautical miles out. Its AIS signal tags it as the Ever Bright. You salute through salt-crusted windows, knowing they'll never spot your shadowed wave. The lighthouse beam catches their bridge windows, a flicker of acknowledgement, or maybe just reflection. Waves relax their sculpting, choppy waters going slack like tired muscles. First sunlight turns the lens room into a kaleidoscope, prisms painting your cheeks with rainbow stripes. You press palms to the warmed glass, relearning the shape of solid ground. Coffee steam spirals with your exhale. Somewhere below, tide pools release trapped air bubbles. The sea, for now, stops pretending to be anything but itself. You find the carvings during a spiderweb purge kneeling to dust the stairwell's underbelly. Blade marks groove the wood. J.R. 1972. Each letter weathered smoother than shipwreck driftwood. Fingertips map the consonants, your nails blackened with the same grime that once packed his. The logbook's brittle pages reveal nothing. January 12th. Storm surge at high tide. Wick trimmed. His handwriting bleeds through 19 years of entries, all weather reports and kerosene levels. Not a single I or me. Historians still argue whether such stoicism was discipline or slow suffocation in solitude's vice. Under floorboards near the coal chute, a tobacco tin rattles with artifacts. A harmonica encased in salt crystals, a lottery ticket from 71 with the try again, smudged by thumbprints, and a Polaroid faded to orange abstraction of a woman squinting against coastal wind. You flip it over. Marlene, Cape Leeuwin, 68. Lighthouse marriages had a 53% collapse rate, fact courtesy of that Maritime Museum podcast. Long distance meant 12-mile swims for mainland visits. J.R.'s tin holds no wedding band, just a copper washer filed into a makeshift ring. You blow dust off the harmonica. The low reed wheezes D-sharp. Sheet music crumples in your pocket from last week's failed attempts at stormy weather. His might fared better. The east wall bears faint scuff marks where a foot could have tapped time. Midnight reveals the tower's acoustics. Your humming reverberates through flues and shafts. The A-flat resonates weirdly near J.R. initials, a harmonic quirk that makes fillings vibrate. Acoustic engineers would salivate over this anomaly. You just note which notes make the seagulls flee. Rain unearths more relics. A whiskey bottle shard surfaces near the rain gauge. Bushmills, 1970. Cork still wedged in its throat. 3 decades of storms couldn't purge the peat smoke aroma. It clings like guilty gossip. Maintenance logs from 72 show gaps, weeks without tide measurements. The final entry: lens polished, foghorn disengaged. No farewell, no explanation. Coastal archivists whisper about a midnight rowboat to Santa Fe, alleged postcards mailed from New Mexico deserts. You picture him trading nor'easters for cactus spines. Horizons equally endless, equally cruel. His bunk's mattress sags with the ghost of a body, the same dip you now contour to nightly. Faint tobacco stains halo the pillow, a halo for the patron saint of vanished men. You've started chewing Nicorette despite his legacy, but the craving tastes eerily familiar. Dawn lifts veil after veil of fog, each layer peeled back with lighthouse winch slowness. You trace J.R.'s initials with tea steam, their edges blurring in the humidity. An old wives' tale claims names dissolve under certain lights, erasing keepers from time's ledger. Your own additions hide in the tower's skin, a doodled octopus in the supply closet. A dried kelp heart pressed between radio schematics, proof that even isolation accumulates sediments. A future keeper might puzzle over your soy sauce stash, evidence of takeout cravings, persisting 16 miles offshore. Visiting inspectors never mention the carvings. Their clipboards only care about bulb wattage and diesel levels. You wonder if J.R. left other marks. Scorch patterns on the stove suggest someone reheated coffee into carbon, a habit you've inherited against all better judgment. Moonlight bleaches the stairwell tonight. The letters glow phosphorescent. Optical illusion, obviously. Still, you swear the R wavers like a face underwater. Theories bubble up. Bioluminescent algae in the varnish. Stress-induced pareidolia. You swallow both explanations. And a third, quieter notion. Retirement letters for 70s keepers. Required psychiatric evaluations. Red-bordered forms asking do waves speak incomprehensible sentences. You practice answers while scrubbing lens grooves. Not yet. Check back Tuesday. His final sunrise here December 3rd. 72 coincided with the last manned Mercury mission. You imagine him hunched over a crackling transistor radio, NASA's countdown echoing through the lamp room. Two solitudes, one hurtling starward, one lashed to terrestrial rock. When the supply boat forgets your birthday again, you paint J.R. on a scallop shell with motor oil. The slurried letters shimmer toxic green, an heirloom for the next caretaker of ghosts. Tracing the carvings becomes nightly ritual, your fingerprints superimposing his. Both hands identically calloused, both salt-etched. Time relents for shared gestures, keeper to keeper, skin to grain, the sea counting its pulse against the rocks below. Rain hammers the cistern's copper roof, 1,000 frantic knuckles demanding entry. You sprawl beneath the drumming metal, spine pressed to cool steel, as the storm composes its magnum opus, drops ricochet off gutters into a rhythmic fugues, staccato highs, barrel-chested lows. 19th century keepers drank this brew straight, cholera be damned, but you've got iodine tablets and a Brita filter. Progress, sort of. Every squall layers new sediment in the tank, eucalyptus pollen, seagull down, Saharan dust carried 12,000 miles. Victorian engineers called it sky tea, boasting how brewed taste richer after cyclones. You stir the water with a kayak paddle, watching whirlpools swallow yesterday's grit. The downpipe moans like J.R.'s harmonica, that same D-sharp haunt. Last week's attempt to play Singen In the rain, startled an albatross into vomiting squid remains on your boots. Lesson learned. Now you let weather handle the soundtrack, its BPM synced to your scrubbing. Tea stains blush the sink as you scour mugs, their porcelain bellies tattooed with tannin rings. Midwinter rains bring an odd perk cistern symphonies amplify after dark. Hydrophones sunk in 1923 recorded abyssal choirs, later debunked as vibrating rivets. You've heard the rumors, how night shift keepers swore tank water whispered coastal ballads. Pressing your ear to the overflow valve tonight, you catch a bass line that could be stand-up bass, or just a trapped air bubble. Historians still argue whether keepers hallucinated music from thirst, or if iron-rich water genuinely altered taste buds. Your own hypothesis. Chronic loneliness rewires the inner ear. That and mold spores. Dawn unveils the catchment's bounty, a glass jar of rainwater held to the light. Suspended particles twirl like drunk fireflies. You recite contaminants like incantations, microplastics, pyrrhotite, maybe a dash of leaked rocket fuel. The 1960s NASA tracking station, Upcoast, wasn't known for eco-consciousness. Boiling rituals commence, kettle hissing through centuries-old protocols. Someone in the 1880s etched brewing times into the tank's flank. 3 minutes for guests, 5 for existential dread. Stale biscuits dunked. You toast J.R.'s ghost. Your chipped mug clinked against the cistern's iron flank. The clang births a secondary tremor, a harmonic that hums through your molars. Sheet music from the supply boat's last visit lies waterlogged Clair de Lune, now a pulpy mess. You improvise, fingertips drumming the water's skin in cross rhythms. The cistern answers with glugging counterpoints, a duet that make a conservatory dropout weep. Seagulls join the cacophony, their screeches slicing through meter like drunk hecklers. By high tide, the tank's song mutates. Wind throttles the inflow pipes into a didgeridoo drone. Aboriginal fish traps visible at low tide. Woven stone labyrinths, older than the lighthouse, seem to hum in sympathetic vibration. You half expect ancestral faces to surface in your tea, but it's just bergamot leaves circling the drain. Nightfall brings the cistern's grand finale, barometric pressure drops, turning the reservoir into a colossal wineglass. Your spoon against the rim elicits a C-sharp that shivers the dish rack. Even the backup generator seems to sway. Its diesel chugging slackens in reverence. You sleep curled against the tank, its metallic lullaby seeping into dreams. Dawn finds you parroting rainfall patterns into the humid air, mouth shaping silent plosives that mimic the storm's cadence. The sea, unimpressed, responds with its own percussion section, waves smashing the cliffs into cymbal crashes. By month's end, you've memorized the cistern's entire repertoire, every drip and gurgle cataloged in muscle memory. The supply boat captain complains you've started talking in water tempo, each sentence broken by unnatural pauses. You blame the Brita filter. Final brew of the evening steeps extra dark. Monsoon runoff has earthy undertones today. Swirling the dregs, you pretend it's Bordeaux. A drip from the ceiling punctuates the fantasy, plinking into the cup with perfect pitch. Somewhere, J.R. chuckles through a mouthful of harmonica, reads, two keepers, separated by decades, united by bad beverage choices. Cold salt air sticks to your lips as you tilt backward, neck craned toward the vaulted blackness. The Southern Cross hangs askew tonight, its 5 stars drilling through light pollution's last gasp. You adjust the radio beacon's dials, their amber glow mimicking the constellation's layout. Kerosene fumes mix with the metallic tang of ionized air. SCENT Chinese letter would call pre-spark. Polynesian navigators once steered by these same stars, their canoes cutting through midnight swells without compasses. You fumble the sextant, its brass edges frostbitten, even in summer. An 1800s whaler's journal described the cross as God's own kite string, though he probably hallucinated that after 3 years of salted penguin meat. Static crackles from the receiver, a Morse code hiccup. The backup transmitter's been moody since Tuesday, its vacuum tubes wheezing like asthmatic ghosts. You thump the casing, a repair technique passed down by every underpaid technician since Marconi. A green light flickers on your knuckles, blessed by the machine gods. Squinting through the azimuth scope, you align Alpha Centauri with a notch in the lens. 16th century astronomers debated whether that binary star caused madness, blaming its pulse-like flicker for celestial hysteria. Your own theory, they just needed better coffee. The beam emitter hums, its vibration syncing with the lighthouse's rotation below decks. You count heartbeats between alignment checks, 14 seconds, same as the intervals between waves hitting the eastern bluff. Timekeepers in Venice once calibrated clocks to Adriatic tides until Aqua Alta flooded their workshops. Nautical charts rustle under surgical gloves. You're protecting them from sweat, not evidence. Red pencil circles mark a freighter's last known position, 93 nautical miles northeast. Historians still argue whether the SS Dorado sank due to celestial miscalculations or a captain's obsession with proving the earth was flat. Your boot scuffs a floorboard etched with star maps, previous keepers, graffiti. One scratched Megrez Ursa Major 1998 beside a crude beer stein. The quadrant's crosshairs tremble. You steady them with a bobby pin jammed into the guidance cog. Precision engineering, Lighthouse edition. A shooting star gutters out near Crux, its death rattle lost in the radio's white noise. 19th century sailors mistook such streaks for heaven's matchheads, sparking against the firmament to relight dead stars. The real shows in your periphery, satellites marching in flawless formation, corporate constellations eclipsing the ancient ones. You trigger a test pulse, the beacon's coded screech echoing through kelp forests. Gray nurse sharks gliding below, think It's a lovesick cetacean. Or maybe they don't. Marine biologists remain divided on elasmobranch musical tastes. Dawn creeps up unwelcome and apricot-colored. The cross dims as the sky pales, its geometry dissolving into blue. You triple-check the coordinates against a tattered 1972 nautical almanac because GPS signals get shy around this headland. Coffee steam fogs the sextant's eyepiece, another entry for the logbook of minor defeats. The relief keeper waves from the supply boat later, his GPS watch blinking smugly. You nod toward the Fresnel lens below, still spinning on century-old gears. Let him have satellites. You've got a skyful of dead reckoners and stubborn meridians, and asterisms wink the only location, shared notification you need. The relief keeper's footprints fade on the dock, another temporary smudge on perpetually damp wood. You circle the fuel depot, 8 steel drums gleaming under a corrugated roof. Kerosene sloshes inside like restless spirits, each barrel a bomb waiting for bad posture. 19th century keepers called it devil's honey, cheaper than whale oil, but prone to phantom fires. Your gloves chafe, triple layered to avoid static sparks. The manual recommends leather, but yours are synthetic polymer blends, progress wrapped in sweat. You hum a sea shanty off-key, anything to drown out the tinnitus-inducing silence between waves. An 1898 medical journal claimed inhaling kerosene fumes cured melancholia. Hence the term lighthouse lung among coastal physicians. The siphon hose resists, its mouth clamped shut like a stubborn muscle. You coax it open with pliers worn smooth by generations of jittery hands. Fuel glugs into the reserve tank, a sound like drowning clocks. Historians still argue whether the Ladies' Light explosion of 1911 stemmed from corroded valves or a keeper's pipe-smoking habit. Diesel fumes rise, your nostrils flare at their acrid perfume. The previous caretaker left a warning scratched above the pump. Dance with fire, sleep with fish. You pocket the cigarette lighter he abandoned, its rusted flint wheel frozen mid-spark, condensation beads on the drum lids. You wipe them with a chamois older than your mother. Each swipe leaves rainbows in the sheen, petroleum prismatics, refracting the afternoon light. Victorian engineers designed these tanks to breathe through cork vents, nature's pressure valves, before anyone understood vapor expansion. A seagull lands on the roof, its talons click-clacking across the metal. You tense. One poorly aimed feather could become a fuse. It eyes you sideways, then regurgitates a half-digested garfish onto drum 4. Lighthouse hazard bingo. Today's card is nearly full. The transfer gauge sticks at 92%. Classic case of mechanical stage fright. You tap it, gently channeling the patience of wartime radio operators, calibrating munition frequencies. Green liquid climbs, a bioluminescent algae bloom trapped in glass. You kneel to check for leaks, knees protesting against concrete. An 1876 manual suggested detecting fumes with canaries. But you've only got a Zippo and prayers, the floors stained with decades of spill patterns, abstract art curated by negligence. Twilight bleeds into the bay. The lighthouse beam ignites overhead. Shadows leap across the depot, sudden and sharp as struck matches. You count the drums again, 8 today, 8 tomorrow, 8 until retirement or immolation. Your sleeve snags on a nail, cotton stretching like time-lapse spider silk. The tear reveals a tattoo from your merchant marine days, a navigational star chart now warped by scar tissue. Kerosene vapors make the lines shimmer, as if the ink remembers the night it was etched. A cargo ship glows on the horizon, its deck lights mimicking the constellation Orion. You triple-check the padlock on drum 5, the one with the dented skirt and suspicious weeping. 19th century poets compared lighthouses to chess rooks, but they never guarded pieces this volatile. The wind shifts, brining the air with salt and foreboding. You retreat to the observation deck, still smelling phantom combustion in your sinuses. Below, the waves gnaw at the cliffside, patient as the fuse on a slow-burning stick of dynamite. The calendar's red X's swarm like fire ants, each mark a day chewed by coastal wind. Your thumb pauses over today's square paper pulp rough under cracked skin. The date swims into focus, your 37th birthday, wearing the same oil-stained sweater as 36. You brew coffee, water boiled on the kerosene burner they warned you about in training. 3 sugar cubes today, defiant crystalline monuments in a chipped enamel mug. Some ancient Greek lighthouse crews celebrated Dionysia festivals with wine soaked into hardtack. But your pantry holds only iodized salt and loneliness. The horizon offers no cards, just the endless blue gamble of Pacific weather. A frigate bird circles overhead, a scavenger eyeing your crumbs with more interest than your relatives ever did. Lighthouse logs from the 1920s mention keepers receiving coconut cakes by postal cutter, crushed to crumbs, but still sweet. You imagine the sugar rush, then crunch another cube between molars. Radio static crackles. The morning marine forecast bleeds through like a choir of broken kazoos. 40-knot nor'easters expected, says a voice that's 80% phlegm. You sip your syrup black coffee, birthday breakfast of champion hermits since at least the Pharos lighthouse era. Rain spits against the cupola, fat drops distorting the world into melted glass. A 1904 photograph shows keepers on Hebrides Islet posing with an accordion and seal carcass, celebration or desperate performance art. Your camera roll holds 300 sunset variations and a blurry shot of defiant kelp. The logbook lies open, its pages absorbing your attention like blotting paper. You write, June 14th. Wind essay. No vessels sighted. Kerosene reserves at 45%. The entry feels incomplete, so you add a sugar packet's worth of rebellion. Birthday. Received, one rogue waves foam bouquet. Beneath the desk, your boot scuffs a loose floorboard. Underneath waits a horde of coffee-stained Polaroids from past years, each a silent party guest. There's you at 29, holding up a mackerel like it's a trophy wife. 34, hairline retreating faster than the tide as you toast with a wrench. No candles here. Open flames violate 6 different safety codes. Instead, sunlight arrows through the lens, above projecting a mini rainbow onto your wrist. You hold still, letting fractured light tattoo your pulse point. The Romans tied birthday rituals to protective spirits. Yours clings to caffeine and OSHA compliance. Whale oil keepers once used wick trimmings as makeshift birthday fuses. Quick spark, quicker extinction. You snap a sardine can's pull tab and pretend it's a party horn. The metallic ping echoes off concrete walls, a solo applause track for surviving another orbit around the sun. By noon, the sugar high crashes, leaving a metallic aftertaste and existential residue. You scrub algae from the catchment tank, hands busy enough to outrun introspection. 19th century keepers claimed birthdays aged slower in isolation, but your lower back argues otherwise. The supply boat's weekly check-in crackles through at 1500 hours. Any requests? Asks the skipper, already knowing the answer. You request nothing, but he sends a mercy bag of peanut brittle next month. The Maritime Safety Manual forbids mentioning personal milestones. Unwritten Rule 37 in a tome of unspoken codes. Dusk brings its own gifts. The lantern's first sweep across gunmetal waves. You climb into the cold cot, sheets gritty with salt from open windows. As sleep drags you under, the last conscious thought surfaces. Maybe surviving the day deserves its own quiet medal. The beam continues its metronomic sweep, marking time, erasing it, carving darkness into something that almost looks like celebration. Rain hammers the lantern room like 1,000 accusing fingers, glass quivering under the assault. You cinch your oilskin tighter, the storm's breath, finding every gap in the seams. 19th century keepers faced typhoons with only whale gut raincoats, a fact that makes your modern gear feel flimsy as tissue paper. Midnight's blackness shatters. A lightning fork carves the sky into jagged thirds. In the afterimage, you spot it, a spectral arc materializing where wave meets air. Moonbow, lunar cousin to daylight's rainbow, its colors whispered rather than shouted. Your boots skid on the gallery's slick iron as you lean out, salt spray tattooing your face. Mariners once mistook these pale arcs for drowned cities, rising their spires glowing beneath the waves. A 1789 log from Captain Bligg's crew describes a moonbow spanning the Timor Sea, a bridge for the devil's own pendulum. You grip the railing, your knuckles matching the whitecaps below. The beam slices through the bow's curve, light carving light into something sacred. Hairline fractures appear in the storm's rage, calm pooling between squalls. You shrug off your hood, let the downpour baptize your sunburnt scalp. Historians still argue whether Churchill drained the harbor during WWII moonbow sightings, thinking them U-boat flares. Tonight's spectacle owes no allegiance to wars or logic. It simply is a fleeting truce between chaos and beauty. Your radio crackles alive, a trawler's garbled transmission bleeding through. See that bloody ghost light. Static swallows the rest. You picture the crew pointing, oilskins glinting, as they track the same celestial math that transfixes you. 19th century whalers used moonbows to navigate fog until the oil in their lamps ran violet and strange. The bow fades as abruptly as it came, leaving retinal burns and a hollowness under your ribs. You check the lens rotation, brass gears gleaming with storm-fed humidity. Tomorrow's log will read 300 hours, observed lunar meteorological phenomenon. No column exists for witnessed the ocean's fleeting tenderness, but your pen hovers anyway. Dawn arrives, exhausted and pink-tinged. You find a rain-slicked feather on the gallery, maybe from an albatross that rode the storms back. Ancient Polynesian navigators wore such feathers as moonbow talismans, or so that documentary on the temperamental TV claimed. The sea glitters now, all evidence of last night's magic scrubbed away. You brew tea with rainwater collected during the squall, steam curling like phantom ship smoke. 300 years ago, a keeper on this very rock described a moonbow so vivid it painted the keeper's shadow in indigo. His journal sits in Sydney's Maritime Museum, displayed under glass that can't fog with human breath. The horizon stretches empty and gleaming as the lens resumes its mechanical yawn. Somewhere below, the feather tumbles seaward, a final salute from the storm's wet fingers. You take the stairs slowly, each step a transition back to the machinery of solitude. You descend into the tower's belly, boots echoing on spiral steps, worn concave by generations of solitude. The mirror fell last winter, shattered into silver shards, now wedged between floorboards. Your hand rises to trace jawline stubble 3 weeks thick. 4. Time here melts like candle wax. N-O Chinese letter to monitor its drip. Victorian keepers used whalebone-handled mirrors, polished weekly until their reflections gleamed like moonlight. Yours lay in pieces, a liberation. Historians still argue whether isolation drove men mad or burnt their minds clean as lighthouse glass. You brew coffee with a splash of rum, breakfast of champions, since at least the golden age of piracy. Sunlight slants through salt-crusted windows, a sundial only useful between 10 and 2. You count hours in tasks, winding gears, scrubbing gull droppings, resisting the urge to shout hello at roiling waves. 18th century hermits practiced vow speech, years of silence, broken only for shipwreck alerts. Your longest dialogue this month, apologizing to a crab for nearly stepping on it. Dust motes swirl in the lantern's updraft, each speck a potential UFO in paranoid 3 a.m. thoughts. You've read Antarctic researchers hallucinate phantom roommates after months alone. Your mind fabricates rustling in empty bunks instead. That documentary said Tesla thrived on solitude, inventing death rays while subsisting on milk and Vienna sausages. You invent better ways to open canned peaches. The logbook demands an entry. Beacon operational. No vessels sighted. You add PS, tried singing. Gulls complained. Some keeper in 1922 sketched constellations between his weather notes, turned the margins into a naked-eye atlas. Your pen hovers, then draws a tiny stick figure waving from the tower. It's progress. Night falls, your shadow splays across the gallery like stretched taffy. The beam carves its endless circles, a mechanical monk at prayer. You recall those medieval hermits who lived in literal holes, fed through slots by townsfolk, too devout to look inside. Their bones fossilized crouching, yours will fossilize mid-coffee pour. Stars emerge sharp as pinpricks in a circus tent. A 1572 text claims Copernicus perfected his heliocentric model while stuck in a Baltic lighthouse. Total bunk, but cozy to imagine. You name constellations after daily irritations. Gullshit Nebula, Broken Pump Galaxy, that squeaky hinge cluster. Dawn arrives, same as ever, yet you document its exact shade of peach. Boredom, you realize, is just attention without desperation. The old-timers had it figured. One log from 1903 lists Tuesday. Mended sock, argued tide tables with God. Your beard now hides a cigarette stub, emergency ration from the 90s. It won't light. Dampness claims all things here. You chew it anyway, tobacco's ghost on your tongue. Loneliness, you decide, isn't empty hours. It's becoming the echo of your own footsteps. 3 pelicans land on the helipad, their gullets bulging with fish. They'll barf for chicks. Lucky bastards, you mutter, then instantly regret insulting your only audience. An 1800s keeper taught a parrot to recite nautical flags. It died screaming Charlie Delta Oscar during a cyclone. You toss the birds leftover biscuits. They side-eye you like ungrateful roommates. Rain arrives, needling through the gallery gratings. You catch drips in chipped mugs, tomorrow's dishwater. The manual says storms boost corrosion rates. You say they boost poetry. That Russian guy in Wonjin wasted a summer writing verse about his neighbor's oak tree. You've got 8 pages on seagull politics. Midnight finds you rereading your sparse mail, a coupon flyer from a mainland hardware store, 50% off solar bulbs. As if anyone here would dare dethrone the sacred kerosene flame. You fold the ad into a crane, set it sailing into the dark. Some Japanese keeper probably did the same in 1946, wishing for peace or better rations. The horizon stays empty, nothing but waves moving like restless sleepers. You adjust the lantern's wick, its glow softens to amber. No one left to witness this small mercy, the light gentling itself for dawn's approach. You hum a half-remembered tune, the sound smothered by wind and the indifferent spin of planetary gears. The backup bulb gutters, its tungsten veins trembling like an aging singer's vibrato. You've known this moment would come. We all outlive our usefulness eventually, but delay yanking the switchbox lever. Edison's first successful filament burned 13 hours. These modern ones last millennia in lighthouse years. Yours survived 7 typhoons, and that hailstorm of 19 deserves a proper send-off. Dust motes swarm the faltering glow, panic-stricken in the sudden dimness. You polish the Fresnel lens, out of habit, circular motions learned from some dead keeper's manual. 19th century glassmakers added gold flakes to lighthouse prisms, believed it softened the beam for drowned sailors' souls. Historians still argue whether it was optics or opium talking. Filaments gasp their last photon. The smell of burnt dust stings your nose. Your fingers hover over the replacement, triple-checked for imperfections. Last full moon. In 1923, a Dutch keeper installed a defective bulb, let 3 schooners smash into dunes before dawn exposed his mistake. You mutter no pressure to nobody. The phrase curdles in the air. The new bulb flares, its light harsher than the old's amber wheeze. Modern LEDs could do this job better, require less kerosene, fewer singed eyebrows. But tradition's a clingy bastard. You've seen the brass placard, hands off the holy fire. Some Edison rumor claims his dying breath lives in a test tube bulb stored beneath a Detroit museum. You wonder if ghosts exist as light, their afterimages burned into retinas. Anchor chain shadows stretch across the wall, fracturing into spidery hieroglyphs. You pocket the dead bulb, still warm like a hibernating creature. That eccentric from the 1960s mail-ordered a lava lamp for the control room, defunct within a week. Salt air inhales anything delicate, including sanity. Rain ticks against the lantern room glass, each drop warped into liquid lenses. You scribble the transition in the logbook. 0237 HRS, spare XII activated. No irregularities. The lie feels cozy. Who'll know you stalled 4 extra minutes? Ship captains never see the color shifts, only the pulse saying here, here, here. Moonlight bleeds through thinning clouds, a second-rate spotlight. You count heartbeats between foghorn blasts. 18. Always 18. Measured breathing helps, except when it sounds like someone else's. Tesla supposedly cloned a pigeon's heartbeat using oscillator vibrations. You've half a mind to try it with seagulls. Dawn's first bleached strands appear, the horizon yawns wide and indifferent. The new bulb's hum sits higher, a teenage soprano next to the old bass. You sip yesterday's coffee, chilled and bitter, as unrequited love. Some Japanese poet compared lighthouses to widows, always watching, never touched. You add a marginalia sketch, a bulb with frowny face. Let future keepers decode that manifesto. Wind rifles through logbook pages, exposing your half-drawn doodles. A 1938 entry surfaces, scrawled in frantic pencil. There in the walls. Every tower has its mad prophet. You prefer yours, with better penmanship. The old bulb cools in your pocket, a smooth obsidian egg. Burial at sea feels too dramatic. Tossing it off the gallery would jinx the tides. Maybe display it on the mantel, a shrine to precarious things. That British keeper who talked to his stove, named all his potatoes, lost a bet and ate, reginald, with visible remorse. Thermos in hand, you monitor the Coast Guard channel, static occasionally broken by a cruise ship's show tunes. The bulb's absence aches like a phantom limb, your pupils still adjusted to its warmer spectrum. You invent a game. Guess the interval before something else breaks. 10-to-1 odds on the generator, always the generator. Salt crusts your eyelashes. Blinking feels like tracing paper over sand. They say Cleopatra's barge used polished mirrors to signal allies, history's first documented light show. You've got 50,000 candelas and no audience, the existential equivalent of shouting into a hurricane. Clouds smother the sunset, no pomp, just gray surrender. You buff the lens until your reflection warps, chin elongated, eyes two pinprick voids. Victorian keepers feared doppelgangers in the glass, believed they'd switch places if you stared too long. Your distorted twin mouths, almost time. The bulb hums on, oblivious to its role in this scratch-checkered routine. You press palms against the lantern room floor, feel the tower's heartbeat through century-old rivets. Somewhere below, waves gnaw the cliffs. Somewhere above, the new light carves its mechanical sonnet. You exhale, and for 3 seconds, mist the glass into temporary blindness. Your boots sink into tide pool mud, the suck and pull of a slurping clock. Morning low tide exposes the reef's teeth, coral fingers gripping the continental shelf. You kneel beside a brain, coral's ridges, each calcium carbonate ring thinner than a fingernail. Darwin charted these growth patterns during the Beagle voyages, never guessing we'd use them as time capsules for acidifying seas. Pocket knife scraping reveals last summer's stony diary, a pale stripe where bleaching nearly killed the colony. Conservationists pay $80 per square inch to adopt dead coral-rich folks, salving climate guilt with credit card gestures. You'd rather listen to the polyps, their silent calculus of survival. The tide chart in your back pocket bleeds ink. Storm surge made the dates swim. You align it with the coral's growth lines, mismatched calendars of human and geological time. 19th century pearl divers chewed reef chunks as calcium supplements, a maritime multivitamin with better crunch than oyster shells. Historians still argue whether Pacific atolls inspired Plato's Atlantis myth. Your votes on drunk philosophers mistaking jet lag for enlightenment. Barnacles scritch-scratch against your waders, opportunists riding the line between sea and stone. A clownfish darts through anemone tendrils, its neon stripes mocking your weathered raincoat. You measure a yearly growth spurt, 2.3 millimeters, same as your hair in winter. Both will erode before they matter. Silt swirls where your fingers disturb the water, miniature cyclones, erasing yesterday's footprints. Lighthouse cement mixes crushed coral centuries of lives, compressed into weatherproof grit. You pat the tower's base, whisper sorry to the reef ghosts. That 1950s keeper reportedly bottled coral elixir, drank it daily until his pee turned chalky. The sun climbs, the tide slinks back like a caught thief. Anemones retract into gelatinous fists, sulking at their shrinking kingdoms. You notch the day's data into sandstone with a screwdriver, Roman numerals for the digital apocalypse. Marine biologists blather about symbiosis. You've seen enough to know everything's a reluctant roommate. Rainbow fish glint in a crevice, their scales flashing Stan Lee cameos. You toss a pebble, watch distorted colors scatter. Some startup wants to 3D print artificial reefs, shaped like corporate logos. Imagine a Starbucks siren crusted with zebra mussels. Profit margins never barnacle this fast. Shadows stretch. The tides return murmurs through sea caves. You pocket a spiral shell, its chambers a Fibonacci taunt. Fibonacci, the guy who convinced Europe math could be sexy. Centuries later, his sequence still hijacks mollusk real estate. Clouds bruise the horizon, wind shoves salt into your pores. You retreat to the supply shed, log measurements in a binder swollen with humidity. Each entry feels like graffiti on the Anthropocene, tiny vanities before the flood. That influencer who tagged the tower last summer, her spray-painted handles now lichen cuisine. Dusk blurs the data, flashlight clamped between teeth as you sketch the reef's contours. Bats swoop for moths above aerialists unimpressed by your groundling science. A hermit crab evicts its shell, upgrades to a Diet Coke cap. You award it bonus points for branding savvy. Waves reclaim the reef, white foam hissing across your study site. Moonlight stitches the surface, drowning your day's work in liquid mercury. You rinse mud-caked hands with drinking water. France's Champagne region covets this mineral profile. Your spit still tastes like borrowed time. The tower door creaks, its hinges protesting your return to dry math. You mount the spiral stairs, each step synced to the coral's millimeter march. Somewhere below, the reef creaks and popcorning shrimp serenade the dark. Historians measure epochs. You measure how long until the next extinction giggles at your ruler. Kerosene lanterns bathe the charts in jaundiced light. Your skull throbs with the reef's unread Morse code. A cargo ship blares its horn. You flip the bird without looking up. Tonight's log entry needs a punchline. Something about clownfish running the circus. Lighthouse beams sweep the resurrected tide. Your abandoned tools glint like sunken treasure. The ocean's a champ at swallowing evidence. You sip cold coffee, its bitterness softened by kelp's distant choral gasp. Dusk bleeds into the beacon's glow. Moths materialize like ash from an unseen fire. Their wings beat a frantic waltz, powdered scales dusting the gallery floor with biological confetti. You lean against the railing, elbows sticky with moth residue that smells like burnt piano keys. World War II blackouts caused coastal moth booms. Whole generations evolved never seeing the moon. Now their descendants orbit your tower, doomed satellites drawn to a counterfeit cosmos. A peppered moth lands on your logbook, its speckled camouflage useless against white paper. You blow gently, watch it spiral toward the lens's cruel embrace. Entomologists in the 1970s glued tiny radios to moths, tracked their spiraling death flights for migration studies. The grant money dried up faster than a moth in a bug zapper. The lamp housing pings with impacts, each thud a mini funeral dirge. You count 47 bodies by midnight, their papery corpses clinging to the glass. That eccentric billionaire who bought a lighthouse just to study moth psychology, his TED Talk consisted entirely of screaming, "The light loves THEM," for 18 minutes. A hawk moth dive bombs your coffee cup, wings buzzing like a deranged kazoo. You shield the brew, knowing caffeine withdrawal amplifies the tower's echo chamber effect. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers secretly used moths as night vision guides, rubbing scales on their eyelids like bioluminescent war paint. Would have saved old JR from that kerosene mishap in '68. Moonlight filters through moth wings, projecting hieroglyphics onto the spiral stairs. You recognize the pattern, same one your ex tattooed after that Estonian vodka binge. Mothra getaways aside, this flock's no guardian of Earth. Just horny idiots mistaking plutonium-grade lumens for a booty call. Dawn's first rays scatter the survivors, their wings tattered like storm-tossed kites. You sweep corpses into an empty jam jar, iridescent greens and grays, clumping into morbid potpourri. That Seattle startup selling moth ash face cream. You've got 3 months' supply in this tin. The morning fog rolls in a clean slate for tonight's sacrificial ballet. You pick a scale from your eyelash, blow it toward the churning surf. Somewhere out there, a fish mistakes it for plankton. The circle of unlife continues. Coffee steams in your hands, its bitterness cut by wind-borne moth dust. You salute the horizon graveyard shifts over. The beacon winks out, taking its cult of light-drunk acolytes offline until dusk. Clouds swallow the sun. Your shadow stretches thin across the gallery. A lone moth quivers in a spiderweb, its hind legs twitching Morse code. You lean closer, translate the beats. Release me. Kill me. Both mean the same here. The spider emerges, its abdomen striped like a forbidden candy cane. You snap the silk with a pencil watch moth and predator plummet into the brine. Ethical dilemmas dissolve faster than moth wings in seawater. Rain taps the copper roof, a staccato rhythm to drown out the silence. You catalog the night's casualties, ink smearing where moth wings stuck to the page. Charles Darwin once pinned 100 moths to a board, labeled it God's confetti. The church bought it for a tithe 2 crates of sacramental wine. Your boots crunch over yesterday's casualties, powder puffing up like geologists' chalk. A gust plasters a moth to your cheek, its proboscis brushing your earlobe. Feels like death's flirty whisper. You scrape it off, leave a gray smudge that'll take 3 washes to fade. The supply boat's horn blares. You wave with your corpse-filled jar. The skipper thinks you're eccentric. The moths think you're God. Both assessments feel equally off-kilter. Salt wind bites through your sweater. Moth scales swirl into miniature tornadoes. You uncork the jar, let the remains join the gale. Their iridescence catches the light brief supernovae above the chop. Tonight's shift looms. The beacon's filament hums a siren song in standby mode. You rub your eyes. Moth dust stings like guilt. The tower's heartbeat quickens, pulling you, and 1,000 wingade fools back into the dance. Morning light warps the bread knife. Green-blue colonies spread across the rye like a drunk cartographer's map. You carve away fuzzy continents, slicing Eurasia off your breakfast with surgical precision. 17th century keepers ate ship biscuits hard enough to crack teeth, sawdust filler disguised as nutrition. This loaf's softer, at least, until the penicillin bloom. The radio hisses a storm warning, static blending with the knife's scrape, scrape, scrape. Victorian sailors believed moldy bread cured infections, chased it with lime juice to ward off scurvy's ghost. You nibble a clean corner, taste the sour tang of strategic surrender. Survival math never lies. Subtract rot, keep calories, repeat. A crumb tumbles into your lap. Ant scouts swarm within seconds. Their antennae tap Morse code against your thigh. We'll take the fallen. You keep the rubble. Fair deal. You brush them off. Watch 6 workers haul the prize toward a crack in the baseboard. Teamwork makes the dream work, even if the dream's fuzzy rye debris. The storm arrives early rain, slaps the kitchen porthole like a pickpocket's fingers. You spread salvaged bread on the stove, charring it into carbonized hockey pucks. Smoke coils upward, swirls into Rorschach blots above the flame. That one looks like your ex's cat. That one resembles Kafka's ghost. Both judgments feel equally defensible. Wind shrieks through the tower's ribs. The whole structure hums B-flat. You dunk a hockey puck in coffee. Watch it disintegrate like a sinking galleon. 18th century lighthouse logs mention green-tinged provender. Historians still argue whether that meant moldy food or a seaweed stew recipe. Either way, someone's ancestors died shitting through a keyhole. Your last jar of peanut butter glares from the shelf, its oily surface cracked like Arizona desert. You skim mold off the top, pretend it's artisan balsamic drizzle. The label claims best before 2019. The sea claims all dates are fiction. Ants return, a whole battalion marching across the drain board. You surrender another crumb. Their victory parade loops past the salt shaker. That Miami reptile zoo tried training ants to clean crocodile cages. The croats ate well that month. Dusk leaks through cloud cover. The beacon's gears grumble, awake downstairs. You pocket 2 hockey pucks, emergency rations for the night shift. The remaining loaf sits maimed, a gutted Samsonite suitcase, spilling fluffy white spores. Biologists say bread mold can survive vacuum conditions. Astronomers nod grimly, knowing the cosmos will end in a green fuzz blanket. Rainwater seeps under the door, carries your discarded mold continents toward the abyss. They bob in the current, microscopic rafts, destined for the drain's black gullet. You salute their voyage, Cortez of decay, Magellan of rot. The beacon's hum rises, a subsonic throb in your molars. You ascend the spiral stairs, peanut butter jar clutched like a holy relic. Survival here's all about editing, trimming life's overgrowth, until only the stubborn core remains. Moths already orbit the lens, their wings shedding powder on the gallery. You unscrew the peanut butter, dip a charred rye shard. Dinner's served, carbon, caffeine, and compromised fats. Bon appetit, moth breath. Wind rips the jar from your hand. It smashes against the railing. Brown streaks bleed down the tower's cheek. Tomorrow's problem, tonight's a lesson in non-attachment. You lick peanut butter off your palm, savor the salt-sweet sting of managed expectations. Waves gnaw the cliffs below, their teeth grinding rock into tomorrow's sand. You brush ant survivors off the peanut butter jar shards, toss them into the gale. They ride the wind, 6-legged Icarus, with nothing left to lose. Midnight creeps in the storm's breath, rattles the lantern room glass. You bite into a hockey puck, crunch echoes through your skull like a sonar ping. Somewhere in the void, a cargo ship's crew eats fresh croissants. You swallow jealousy with a lukewarm coffee chaser. The sea cares nothing for bake sales. By first light, only crumbs remain. You sweep them into an envelope, address it to no one. Let the wind decide their fate. Survival's just the art of losing gracefully, one mold speck at a time. Low tide reveals the kelp's treachery. Slick fronds snake across tidal rocks like drunken serpents. Your boot sinks into the rubbery mess. A squelch echoes up your spine. 19th century mariners boiled this stuff into glue emergency hull patches when planks sprang leaks. You doubt it'd bond with dignity. The hold tightens. Kelp's serpentine grip defies dead vegetation. Microscopic hooks line each ribbon, evolution's version of Velcro. Victorian aquariums displayed kelp in puddles of iodine, claiming their fumes cured goiter. You inhale the briny stink, thyroid be damned. A wave retreats, exposing barnacle-crusted boulders beneath the kelp quilt. Historians still argue whether medieval Icelanders triggered coastal erosion, over-harvesting kelp for glass-making ash. You yank your leg free, leather squeals against algal grip. The answer seems obvious today. Nature always cashes its checks. 2 more steps. Kelp loops around your ankle like a vengeful ex. You crouch, filament blades cling to your wrist hairs. Danish scientists once trained seals to fetch underwater kelp samples. The seals kept the snacks. Researchers got buckets of fish heads. Priorities. Salt spray mists your face. The lighthouse window winks far above. You carve through stems with a pocket knife. Sap oozes like nasal mucus. Macbeth's witches used kelp in their cauldron. Or was that just hemlock? English majors debated over lukewarm mead. The freed boot drips, its laces studded with translucent pods. You pop one, salty gel bursts on your tongue. Emergency rations. Jacques Cousteau ate kelp during underwater habitation trials, said it tasted like regret and ozone. Accurate. A tendril coils around your knife sheath. Vegetable Houdini refuses to quit. Tiny crustaceans skitter through the fronds, their shells clicking like dropped silverware. You surrender a strip of jerky. Watch them dismantle it in seconds. Even kelp's minions understand leverage. The tide turns. First wave licks your boots. Centuries of sailors whispered about kelp beds trapping ships, dragging them down to bladder-rack palaces. You retreat toward higher rocks. The stalks hiss as they release you. Defeat smells like low-tide sushi. Gulls scream overhead. Their droppings pockmark the kelp's slimy tapestry. Perfect. You scrape guano into a jar screw top, tightening with resentment. Elizabethan gardeners paid gold for seabird manure, called it white gold for their roses. These gulls give it freely, with contempt. Back in the galley, you rinse kelp sap from your knife. The blade glints, your reflection warped in its steel. Japanese divers once tied rocks to kelp stalks, marking underwater prayer shrines. You mark your survival, one sliced frond at a time. Nightfall brings fog. Kelp's silhouette writhes on moonlit rocks. You sip brackish tea, watch the beacon slice through mist. Every organism clings here, even the limpets stuck to your boot tread. Persistence isn't virtue, just the only game in town. The radio crackles. A trawler reports engine trouble northeast. You log their position. Imagine kelp fingers snagging their propeller. The ocean feeds on all hubris, yours included. Stale bread waits on the counter, green veins pulsing softly. You pare away decay again and chew. Fog clings to the window panes. The logbook's columns blur into gray smudges. You rub your eyes. The afterimage of the lantern pulses in your retinas. 19th century keepers went half-blind polishing lenses. Their cataracts glowed like frost on glass. You rotate your eyeballs clockwise. A Victorian eye exercise manual swore it prevented blindness. It just makes you carsick. Shadows deepen in the corners. Ink smears twist into spidery legs. The desk lamp flickers. A moth carcass crispens on the bulb. You reach for eye drops. The bottle's label reads, certified belladonna-free. Progress. Medieval monks treated vision problems with leech applied directly to the cornea. Hard pass. The walls breathe. plaster cracks ripple like slow-motion lightning. Historians still argue whether Columbus's crew saw mermaids or manatees. You're voting exhaustion. A wave crashes. The sound becomes whispers in a dead captain's dialect. You shut the logbook. Its pages leave red imprints on your forearm. Stumbling outside, you blink at the moonlit rocks. Granite morphs into slumped shoulders, a congregation of stone mourners. Your coffee mug sits abandoned. It grins at you with a barnacle smile. 18th century sailors drank rum mixed with gunpowder to cure scurvy. You add a splash of whiskey to your tea, close enough. The beacon sweeps overhead. Its glare paints afterimages on the dark. You count the pulse, 7 seconds between rotations. A modern metronome. Lighthouse tenders in the 1920s used to play jazz records, syncopated rhythms against the machine's drone. You hum Take the A Train off key. The rocks hum back. Salt crusts your lashes. Every blink clicks like a shutter. You focus on the tide chart. Numbers swim like tadpoles. An Antarctic explorer's diary described seeing pink elephants. Turns out it was just snow blindness. Your hallucinations have better cinematography. That shadow just tipped its hat, wiping the lenses. You avoid staring directly into the prism array. The beam fractures into rainbows Mondrian would have wept. Your reflection warps in the glass, a funhouse version with squid black eyes. Renaissance painters added bovine urine to their varnish for luminosity. You add Windex. Dawn approaches. The horizon bleeds into your peripheral vision. Night's imaginings retreat like ashamed party guests. Your mug's barnacle teeth were just a clam shell, probably. Maritime archives overflow with fever dream entries. Kraken sightings, flaming ships, women walking on waves. Skeptics call it sleep deprivation. You call it hazard pay. The radio crackles. A cargo ship confirms your coordinates. Their first mate's voice sounds suspiciously like your third-grade teacher. Coincidence? Probably. You log the contact. The pen's nib splits the paper. A splinter of focus pierces the fog for 3 seconds. The world holds still. Gulls wheel past. Their shadows scrape the tower like claws. You microwave yesterday's chowder. The rotating plate becomes a hypnotist's wheel. Canned carrots swirl into a Van Gogh vortex. Dutch Golden Age painters used crushed beetle shells for red pigment. You push the bowl away, suddenly not hungry. Foghorn rattles your molars, its bass note dispersing the last visions. The sea remains eternal show-off, crashing and retreating on cue. Your eyes still sting. Your hands still shake, but the light keeps turning patient as a widow, counting each second until the next betrayal of waves. The storm's leftovers cling to your pockets, dampness seeping into the last dry matchbox. Your thumbnail finds the striker strip, oxidized red like old bloodstains. Safety matches hit ports. In 1855, Swedish chemists swore they wouldn't ignite in pockets. You press the sulfurous tip against the strip. It sparks twice before catching. Yellow light erupts, a miniature sun hissing in your fist. Victorian match girls used to seal boxes with their tongues. Phosphorus necrosis turned their jaws green before killing them. You cup the flame, air currents lick at your fingers like thirsty dogs. The backup lamp's wick huddles in its brass socket, charred and trembling. Kerosene fumes hang thick, your lungs ache from yesterday's repairs. Maritime historians still bicker over the 1912 East Shore Light explosion, faulty wiring, or Keeper's rum-soaked rage. The flame kisses the wick, it resists, sulking like a scorned lover. You curse through clenched teeth, air whistles between molars, wind shrieks through a crack in the gallery door, the fire bends sideways. A memory surfaces. Childhood birthday cakes, your brother blowing out candles with hurricane force glee. The wick finally accepts the flame, sputtering into a steady blue-orange teardrop. Relief tastes metallic, adrenaline and inhaled soot. Your knees protest as you stand. The lighthouse groans in sympathy. The spare canister kerosene glints in the corner. Last week's leak left rainbow slicks on concrete. 19th century whalers once burned seal oil in their lamps. Stench, so potent it repelled polar bears. You take bears over this silence. Fog presses against the lantern room windows. The glass sweats pearly droplets. You adjust the newly lit lamp. Its heat warps the air like a desert mirage. Arctic explorers rubbed gunpowder into their lenses to prevent ice buildup. You settle for a vinegar rag. It smears more than cleans. The horizon remains stubbornly dark, no ships to validate your vigil. Cold creeps up your sleeves, the kind that embeds itself in bone marrow. A shudder rattles your spine, part exhaustion, part residual fear. 18th century physicians prescribed mercury baths for chills. You opt for jumping jacks, 3 reps before dizziness wins. Rain starts again, needles hitting the iron roof in erratic Morse code. Your breath fogs the panes. You doodle a lopsided starfish in condensation. The main lamp's gears whir above, celestial mechanics mirrored in greasy cogs. Bureaucrats tried replacing keepers with automated bulbs in 78. Every unit failed within 6 months. You slump against the tool cabinet. A screwdriver jabs your kidney. Tomorrow's problem. The backup lamp flickers. Its glow paints long-fingered shadows across the walls. They twitch like marionettes, a puppet show for insomniac ghosts. You count the fuel reservoir levels 7 times. Numbers blur into hieroglyphs. Dawn arrives unannounced, gray light dissolving the night's sharp edges. Your fingers smell of phosphorus and regret. The radio stays silent. The gulls stay gone. But somewhere beneath the tower's stone ribs, the original 1897 boiler exhales steam. It's enough. The replacement's boots scuff the dock, untried leather squeaking against wet planks. You toss him the keys. They arc over tidal pools, glittering with spilled diesel. Coastal regulations mandated handover rituals. Until 1994, paperwork signed in triplicate under kerosene lamplight. His sunburned fingers fumble the catch metal plunges into brine. First lesson, you rasp, voice unused to company. Never throw anything to a lanceman. He blushes beneath peeled skin, red echoing the tower's fading warning lights. You lead him upstairs, his breath already ragged at the fourth spiral turn. The boat captain waits below, her engine idling in impatient bursts. 19th century relief keepers brought wives, entire families crammed into the lamp room. FOR, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. You prefer solitude. His eyes widen at the fuel drums, kerosene rainbows swirling in morning light. How often does it, blow up? Only on Tuesdays. The joke falls flat, his atoms apple bobs like a buoy in rough seas. You demonstrate the wick trimming technique, blistered thumbs pressing waxed thread into place. Rainwater still drips from the gallery grate, each plink counting down your final minutes. During the 1937 automation trials, keepers secretly misaligned lenses to prove machines couldn't toil. He asks about storm protocols, voice cracking on squall. You point to the logbook, its spine split from years of salt-stained fingers. Your mattress indentation remains on the cot, a fossilized outline of restless nights. Modern crews use motion-sick pills for tenderfoot keepers. You leave the half-empty bottle in the medicine cabinet, down the stairs, each step lighter than the last. The captain revs her engine, a blue haze staining the dock's weathered boards. Historians still argue whether departing keepers stole lens fragments as souvenirs. Your pockets hold only lint and a fossilized gull feather. The tower door clangs shut, a sound that once meant sanctuary. Now it's a full stop. Waves slap the hull as you climb aboard, wooden planks alien after months of stone. The replacement waves from the lantern room, his silhouette already dissolving into routine. Victorian keepers believed ships could sense hesitation in the light's rotation. You watch the beam steady itself, unguided, unbroken, rocking through the swell. The mainland's haze smudges the horizon. Your hands itch for the logbook's familiar grain. The captain offers whiskey from a dented flask, peat smoke, and lost hopes. You decline. 3 porpoises breach astern, their backs gleaming like polished lens glass. By sunset, the tower's just a needle stitching sea to sky. Your crewmate snores below decks, a rookie mistake before night watch. The lighthouse winks once, a coincidence of optics and longing. Salt crusts your eyelashes, or maybe it's something else. Either way, you let the waves rock you toward an unwritten tomorrow. The mainland's haze softens, sky bleeding into steel blue waves. Your palms smooth against salt-crusted rails. No logbook pages to turn, no wicks to trim. Breath deepens, the kind that comes when duty lifts, like coastal fog burned off by noon. Darkness arrives, gently, no beacon to tend, just stars wearing the lighthouse's old crown. 3 porpoises surface beside the hull, their breath misting the air like ghostly lighthouse fumes. You count their arcs, 1, 2, 3, until they vanish into the deep. The captain's flask glints under moonlight, an unspoken invitation. You shake your head, whiskey tastes different when the sea isn't your only company anymore. Wood creaks beneath your feet, no longer the tower's granite certainty, but borrowed rhythm. Below deck, the rookie's snores hiccup, untrained lungs still learning salt-air lullabies. Your bunk sways, a cradle rocked by currents older than kerosene or steel. Fingertips brush the gull feather in your pocket, brittle, but still sharp enough to catch moonlight. Horizon stitches itself closed, needle and thread of foam, and fading red cliffs. Years of storm logic whisper. The light survives. You test the truth, exhaling slow, watch your breath dissolve into the brine-kissed dark. Eyelids sink, weighted by tides, not worry. Somewhere behind you, beyond the world's curve, a beam turns. Steady, automatic, patient. Sleep comes like an old friend who doesn't knock, sheets smelling of iodine and yesterday's rain. Your last thought lingers, not of lenses or logs, but how the sea hums the same lullaby to keepers and open water. Dawn will bring shores with street lamps waiting, but tonight you drift unmoored, suspended between two kinds of light. The waves rock slower now, each roll a whispered enough. A tide retreating, a final page left blank. Stars dim, breath evens. Somewhere a gull cries, or maybe it's the wind through rusted railings, or memory, or nothing at all.